What's the weirdest thing you've seen happen at a friend's house that they thought was normal? Here's an I was that family story. My godmother, who was practically an aunt, ran a fairly successful daycare out of her home in the 90s. She was a first generation immigrant to the US, whose parents came to the New England area from Ireland. My 2 younger brothers and I spent a lot of time at her home, and I was generally the oldest child there. When I was about 8 years old, she started to have me make her favorite drink, gin and tonic. She drank these all day while running her home daycare. At age 8 I knew how to mix cocktails, that forks were better for stirring than spoons, and that large plastic bottles of gin were cheap and low quality. This went on for years, on pretty much a daily basis, until my family moved out west. My godmother kept her daycare running until she died, I'm sure of health problems relating to alcohol. I was 15 when she passed, and I'm in my 30s now. I honestly went most of my life thinking nothing of it until I became a father a couple of years ago, at which point I was like, how the duck did anyone let her have a daycare? Side note, I drink but would consider myself an average drinker, if not below average. With that being said, I could never stomach the thought of gin, and didn't try gin until I was 30. This was because I once licked my finger early in my daycare bartending career, after a couple of drops of gin splashed on my hand as I was pouring. That plastic half-gallon quality gin was the worst thing I'd ever had in my life, and I had no idea how my godmother liked it so much. Complete ruined my taste for gin. A date. I had a friend in HS. We are still friends today actually. His mom was a hoarder. There were little pathways throughout the house, but it was filled, from floor to ceiling, with junk. In the hallway to the bedrooms, she had stacked every newspaper she ever got. They were tied up in bundles. When you walked in that hallway, he would caution to not touch the papers, because if a row fell, it would take a couple hours to dig yourself out. So when my dad died, my mom remarried and had 2 kids. I was moved into the basement, unfinished basement. I didn't think anything of it since I was 10. I had a sheet blocking my area from the laundry area. It had bare concrete walls, wood beams and piping across the ceiling and cement flooring. Used a heater and dehumidifier cause it was cold and humid. When I used the heater, my parents would make my sheeted area around my bed so it would heat up the space quicker. Parents didn't allow any of my friends over, and my brother and sister weren't allowed in my room. Distant family members also never stayed over, and when we had family gathering, I was told to go into the guest room instead of my room. While they were there, I thought, cool, I have a huge room and no one can mess it up. My family would go on vacations yearly without me from when I was 12 till I was 18. I was the dog and house watcher. During one of those vacations, when I was 17, I invited a friend come over. They pointed out how ducked up it was that there were bedrooms fully furnished with TVs for my brother and sister, a guest room fully furnished as well with a TV, and how I was in the basement with sheets for walls and bathroom mats on the floor. I completely dismissed it cause it was normal to me. It wasn't till I was 20 that I found out that the family trips that I didn't go on were paid for with money that I was getting from my dad passing away. I'm sure I got some of the money in food and clothes and whatever I needed, but it's got me pretty ducked up cause my brother and sister don't have any memory of it, and when I talk about it, they always back my parents by saying we were raised right and I opted out of vacations. They also thought the guest room was my room. I babysat for a family on occasion and the kids would always ask for a cool cup, and I had no clue what it was. They asked for them constantly, but were too little to really describe them enough for me to understand. I mentioned it to the mom in passing one day and she started laughing and cut the tops off of some bell peppers and took out the seeds and then filled the peppers with tap water. The kids went nuts over them like they were treats. It was really weird to me that drinking water out of bell peppers was a thing to beg for on the regular. My family were very comfortable and my mom always babysat lots of kids from around the neighborhood. Basically her place was just where the kids hung out. Once there was an emergency with my dad and my mom really needed somebody to watch me overnight, and I wound up with one of the families that she babysat for. They were really nice people and I was close friends with their kids obviously because they were at my house every day. It was a new experience though. This was the first time I'd ever seen people living in real poverty. I was kind about it and I didn't say anything. But parts of it were a real shock to me. The toilet didn't work, but they had just continued to use it to the point that it was piled up to the seat. We had to unscrew the light bulb to turn off the lights because the switch would shock you if you touched it. I felt really bad for them. It was just a real eye-opener for me as a kid, and it gave me a much better understanding of exactly why my mom babysat and fed all those kids. Had a friend whose family lived on a huge property and kept cows for the property tax exemption. Not odd. He told me to come by and get some purple ringers he collected for me, invited me in to meet his parents, and I swear to God, there was a full-size cow chilling on one of their couches in the living room. That sight was way more wild than any of the hallucinations later experienced. Really nice people though, lol. Growing up we had some goats and land, but no cows. My brother decided to go to the livestock auction with one of his friends and saw a baby cow being sold for meat. I guess he just couldn't stand the thought of this poor little cow being sold to be eaten, so he won the auction for it, walked it home somehow, didn't put it in the pasture, nor the backyard, but inside the house instead. My mom came home from work and was like, "Excuse me everyone, why is there a cow in the hallway?" Laughing my butt off. He got in so much trouble. Loved that cow though. He thought he was a goat. When I was younger I was best friends with two brothers from Jamaica. One of the days they asked me to stay over so we could play some Atari after we finished playing outside. We came home 12 minutes after their curfew, so their dad, who was extremely calm, told us to sit in the living room. I sat in there with my two friends and they were super quiet, which was a bit weird, until their dad walked in with a belt and beat the living shit out of them. I shit myself, not literally, because I thought I was in for a beating, but he didn't hit me, which was a huge relief. After the beating their dad asked if I would like some carrot juice, while my friends just went back to normal and set up their Atari like nothing happened. I was sat on the sofa wondering what the duck just went on. My GF and her little brother were staying at a sort of foster home that was absolutely filthy. They knew it was, but weren't going to complain about it since it was still better than their last situation. But the parents there had two little boys of their own, and it's their normal. I feel bad that those boys will either realize their home is disgusting and never invite anyone over, or have someone over who then embarrasses them, or doesn't want to be their friend anymore because of it. Former foster youth here, this is not out of the ordinary. My bro and I lived in a foster group home for 2+ years. That was absolutely disgusting. Old house infested with cockroaches. Dilapidated and filthy. At one point she didn't have trash service. We just stacked the filled hefty bags in the carport. There was never less than 5 boys living there, usually more. The old lady had dogs that would regularly poop in the house. I remember climbing over cluttered junk to access my bed. The floor was not visible. She got her license revoked after prospective adopters came to visit. They couldn't believe how gross it was and reported her. Us kids didn't think anything of it. Crazy what kids can become accustomed to. Slept over at a friend's when I was around 10. She was the only girl in her family and had 5 brothers whose ages ranged from like 4 to 15. Everything about my friend's room sleeping situation was normal, but her brother's room was bizarre. They shared one big room with 3 bunk beds, each mattress a fitted sheet, a pillow, and nothing else. No top sheets, no blankets, no comforters. Also, the boys didn't have pajamas. They all just slept in the clothes they had worn that day, with their shirts tucked into their pants and belts on, too. Their room didn't have a door, and neither did their connected bathroom or their closets. Turns out they were fundamentalist Christians, and the boys' setup was meant to prevent masturbation. In 6th grade, my first ever sleepover, I went to the bathroom and came out to him blasting porn in the living room, and I had never seen porn before. We watch it for like 10 minutes and he says, "I'm so horny I gotta jack off, bro." Then he started cranking his dick right there in front of me, and I was shocked. The video was some fat dude cucking another guy and making him cry. I'll never forget that. Was sleeping over at a friend's house in 6th grade. 3 p.m. we show up to her house after school. We walked into her apartment to find her mom half dressed, passed out drunk, and sprawled out with her head on the floor. One arm twisted weirdly so it somehow was resting on the coffee table, and her legs on the couch. TV was on and blaring. Didn't even notice our arrival. I had zero experience with this kind of thing, and although I could tell my friend was embarrassed, I didn't understand the full implications or really what was happening. I pretty much just thought it was an odd place for a nap, which is how I explained it to my parents later when I commented on how odd it was to be napping there instead of in bed. I might have even asked them if they would let me sleep on the couch and watch TV too. Bless my parents for immediately understanding the situation, but not making a scene, and not spoiling my navette, or ever embarrassing my friend in any way. My family is pretty good at being subtle, for better or worse. However, that was absolutely the last time I stayed at her house. All sleepovers with that particular friend were at my house from then on. But it was a casual coincidence from my POV. I didn't even notice that subtle change for a couple years. Looking back, I think my friend really appreciated it though. We are still friends, and she has kids of her own, and she's doing great as a doctor. But her mom still has the same alcohol struggles, and is very in your face about it even now as she was then. One of the first times I met my husband's family, I was over at their house and husband gestured for me to sit down and be comfortable. Their house was really very cluttered. Not quite hoarder cluttered, but close. They had a couple of couches facing each other, and then some other chairs. Not knowing the rules, I sat on one of the couches, which had a lot of stuffed teddy bears on it. Oh my god. You would think I had sat down on live bears. There were probably 20-30 small medium stuffed bears on this couch. Husband's mother and twin brother both visibly reacted, as if I had damaged the bears. Not antique bears either. That was when I was told that the couch was for the bears, and only for the bears, and that no one was allowed to sit on the bears' couch. Just the bears. The bears all had little beaded necklaces with their names on them to tell them apart, because they were all the same brand and style. Kinda the opposite. Had a friend over when my dad went on a tirade screaming and yelling at my brother and I. We thought it was normal to have emotionally abusive parents. After that friend never came over again. I went to his house, and his parents seemed a bit more interested in me. By the time we graduated high school I got my diploma and walked over to hug his parents before my own at the ceremony. I remember asking my mom how come she didn't like me like my friends' moms liked their girls. I told her they always hugged and talked to each other and laughed, and said I love you multiple times throughout the day. I was 10. My mom rolled her eyes at me and went to her room. I tried to be close to her until I was about 16. I finally realized she didn't give a shit about being close to me. She was very affectionate and close to my brothers and little sister. After she realized I didn't care anymore, she started to make an effort. I'm extremely lucky for my dad though. He was there for me for anything and everything. Later on I realized she was extremely jealous and hated that my dad doted on me. Thanks Reddit. Even if no one reads this, it was therapeutic typing it out and just getting it out there. Not at my friend's house, but we were 15-year-olds and went for a walk to her mum's friend's house to get her some smokes. We walked into the house and the 2-year-old was covering themself in margarine. The floor was covered in roaches, animal poop, used nappers, diapers, and rubbish. There was peanut butter on the walls and kitchen table. It was so incredibly sad to see dirty and disheveled kids living in that. The weirdest part was seeing the toddler smearing margarine in their hair, and no one caring. The rest was disgusting, but I'd seen that kind of living before. Never the complete indifference towards a baby though. Awful. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness and my mom pushed me to be friends with people within the religion. One girl was only allowed to talk to people within the religion, so she was homeschooled. She was allowed to watch one movie or one TV show a day rated GPG with approval. 3 of us, aged 16, watched Lion King, so then her parents made us go to bed at 7:30 in the summer. She also wasn't allowed to have any posters on her wall as that was viewed as idol worship. Her parents came in to approve our prayers for the night. I left feeling super bad for her. A toddler drinking a wine cooler. The whole family was ducked up but that stuck out to me for obvious reasons. I was only 18 at a party, drinking underage, and had no idea what to do when I saw that. I made a comment about how little kids probably shouldn't drink alcohol, but the kid's mom got scary defensive about it. When I was in junior high, I went over to a friend's house for the first time. His parents were hoarders and their basement was waist deep in newspapers, magazines, junk mail, catalogs, phone books, and other loose papers. You had to crawl over it to get to his room. He acted like it was no big deal, that the papers were higher than the couch, or that an avalanche happened every time he opened his bedroom door. That was the only time I went over. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.